game changer episode of that mid-season finale. Parallel universes, more on that at the end of the video. Hey, I'm Phil, welcome to my channel and another Star Trek Discovery video. In today's video, we've got a little bit of news, which you probably already have heard anyway, but I'll give it to you anyway. We're going to be doing my quick review of all the episodes so far, and what I think of the series so far. And at the very end, stay tuned for my prediction corner of what's going to happen for the rest of the season, going forward. I used to use the word going forward, didn't I? Oh, I feel dirty. So that news, as you will be aware if you watch Star Trek Discovery, it's now on a mid-season break. Won't be back now till the 7th/8th of January, depending on where in the world you are. 7th in the US, 8th in the UK, and presumably anywhere else it's on Netflix. I don't like mid-season breaks. They're annoying. And I don't see the need for them in a streaming world, frankly. I mean, I get it, on TV, they have their, they haven't always finished filming them by the time they go out, but surely in an on-demand streaming world, I thought they'd finished recording them all, but maybe not. So I don't really see the need for the mid-season break, but we've got it, so we just have to live with it. When it returns, there will be 6 more episodes, I believe, of the first season, which makes it shorter than traditional Star Trek seasons, but hey, another great thing about the on-demand world and the sort of flexibility you get with streaming services is that you can have the right amount of episodes to tell the story, and you don't need to have filler episodes. So I think that's a good thing. Having less isn't necessarily a bad thing if it means you don't get the filler. It's also been renewed for Season 2, so as well as coming back in January, we're also going to get a Season 2 at some point. When that will be, though, is a bit up in the air. Generally, they're saying that it's probably not going to be the same time next year that it started this year. It's probably going to be a bit later than that because of the time it takes to produce them. So we might not be seeing it, I would guess, until early 2019, probably. That's probably when we're going to see Season 2, which is a bit of an annoying wait. But hey, I'm a Doctor Who fan. I'm used to annoyingly long waits between seasons sometimes. So that's the news part of this video over and done with. Let's just quickly tell you what I thought about each of the episodes. Episodes 1 and 2, the pilot episodes, I gave a bit more of a view of what I thought of those in my previous Star Trek video about all the inconsistencies and the continuity inconsistencies that I did about 3 weeks ago. I'll put the link to that. I forget which side it goes. Is it that side? I'm going to guess that side. If I'm wrong, sorry. Link there. So if you want to really know what I think about episodes 1 and 2, go view that one. But basically, I was a little bit wary. Some elements of the first 2 episodes I liked. I found Michael's character quite interesting, but there was a lot in there that I thought was weak as well. So, I mean, it felt more like a prequel to the actual series rather than part of the series itself, which I think was a bit of a drawback for it, I think. Episode 3, though, Context is for Kings, was a vast improvement on the first 2 episodes, I thought. We were introduced to some more interesting characters like Captain Lorca and Spore Drive scientist Stamets. And this episode introduced some of the serialized plot elements, which I think gave an indication of where the series was going and the kind of tone of the series, which I really liked. I like serialized storytelling. I think episode Bad Guys of the Week storytelling is very dated, so I was quite pleased about where the direction this was going, and I think this episode was a good indication of that. We also got our first introduction to the Spore Drive, which made me think that my prediction from the previous week when I'd done the previous video was probably could be actually looking like it might go somewhere, and hey, we've had some more evidence for that since. I'll get to that. Episode 4, The Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cries. Bit of a mouthful of a title, but I'm not going to judge an episode on its title. I will judge it on its plot though, and I think this was one of the weaker episodes of the season so far, out of the 9 episodes, apart from the 2 pilot episodes. But partly that's because I think the plot was needed to set up a lot of stuff that was either important later on, already has been important, or I suspect will be important at some point, like the disappearance or the last sighting of Vok. We haven't seen him since. Or have we? More thoughts on that at the end. Episode 5, Choose Your Pain. A good prisoner of war story, this one. I enjoyed this, and it also gave us our first introduction in this series to Harry Mudd, a character who has been in the original series and the animated series in the 60s, so fans of that will know who I'm talking about. But I think this was a much more grounded version of the character. It's obviously a character that's 10 years younger than the version we see there, and the version in the original series was, often portrayed as a bit of a comic relief character, and in this version he's much more gritty. He seems like he's genuinely a bit more menacing, and that his backstabbing might pose a real danger to you, and that if you cross him, you might actually, he's gonna come after you. He's a bit more menacing, basically, and I like that. I think I was a bit cautious about his inclusion in this series when he was in the trailers, based on his previous appearances. But, the backstory of the character is actually quite interesting, and I think they're exploring that well in this series, in this and his later appearance as well. We're also introduced to the character of Ash Tyler, another Starfleet prisoner in the Klingon prison, who then later on joins the Discovery team after they escape. And I think he's potentially one of the most interesting characters in the series. I think there's a lot of layers to him, and I think he's going to be very important, based on one of my predictions, which I think everyone knows about now, and everyone has probably come to the same prediction as I have. It seems pretty obvious. Get to that in Prediction Corner too. Yeah, I thought this was a very good episode. Well scripted, well thought out, well directed, and so, like I say, interesting characters introduced both in Harry and Ash Tyler. Episode 6, Leaf, and it was interesting to see a bit of Michael's backstory explored, and her relationship with Sarek explored as well. I think James Frayne does a really good job of portraying Sarek, actually, and actually better than the version, the guy who played him in the 2009 movie. You have to look up that guy's name, hold on. Ben Cross. I think James does a better version than Ben of Sarek, personally. That's just my opinion. Episode 7, Magic Makes the Sanest Man Go Mad, was actually a really fun episode. Now look, any sci-fi series that goes on long enough will eventually probably do a Groundhog Day style episode with time loops and repeating days over and over again. That's a pretty staple of the sci-fi genre. Various other Star Trek series have done it before. I know Stargate did an episode of it, Eureka has done it. Any sci-fi is going to do it eventually, basically. Discovery's got in there early in the first season, but I like it, and it was a nice little twist on it, because you didn't, usually with the Groundhog Day style plot lines, your point of view character, the character you are following, is the character that is experiencing the repeated days. They know and they're aware of the repeated days, but our point of view character throughout this whole series is mostly Michael, and she's not the one this is happening to. The one this is happening to is the Spore Drive guy, and he pops in kind of infrequently to try and impart the knowledge. It's just that it was a bit of a different way of doing it, and I made it a bit more refreshing. Look, I like most Groundhog Day style episodes, but this was just a nice little change. And I'm sure that other sci-fis have probably done this before, but just not ones that I've seen, I don't think. So it was a nice refreshing change for me. Plus we got the return of Harry Mudd, which again, like I said before, I quite like this version of Harry Mudd. He's interesting, and an interesting foil for our crew. I'd like to see him pop up again at some point. Not too much, but maybe season 2, just one episode in season 2. It'd be nice for him to pop up every once in a while. Episode 8, now I'm going to try and pronounce this. It's Latin. Si vis pacem para bellum, which translates as, if you want peace, prepare for war. Again, this was an okay episode. I didn't dislike it. It felt like another one of those episodes where things are happening because they need to happen to progress the plot in future episodes, or future episode, as we are one episode away from the mid-season finale here. I didn't really buy Saru's strange behaviour. It didn't seem... Saru, I think, is an interesting character, actually. I quite like, some of the things they've told, like the backstory for his race being prey on their planet and things like that. I still don't think that... It just didn't feel quite right the way he was reacting in this episode. He clearly wasn't being controlled by the creatures. but he was sort of being unconsciously influenced. I don't know. It just didn't seem to sit well for me. What was more interesting in this episode for me was actually the Klingon side of the plot, where they were trying to interrogate the Starfleet Admiral, and the Admiral tried to escape with the help of the female Klingon, who wanted apparently to defect. So that was the more interesting part of the plot and this episode for me, and the rest of it was kind of just setting up stuff for future episodes or future episode. And finally we reached the episode 9, the mid-season finale, Into the Forest I Go. The game changer. I really liked the stuff with Tyler's PTSD aboard the Klingon ship. I thought that was good, the way he reacted when he saw the female Klingon. I thought he acted that really well, and great kudos to the actor there. And I think it hints at some stuff which I'll get onto in a second. I thought the tension in the episode was really good. Some of the battle scene and the hopping around the science to try and come up with how to break discover the cloak. That was all interesting. It also felt like this could be the end of the main Klingon plotline, or the war plotline in a way, because they, by the end of the episode, they'd blown up the leader of the Klingons who was waging this war. And yes, there are loads of houses and there are loads of pockets and loads of battles probably still going on, but it felt like the big battle had now been won by the end of this episode. And I think that's partly so that they can move on to the next chapter in the story with a bit of a clean slate and not have to worry about getting back to the war as such. And that cliffhanger earlier on, Lorca had said that he suspected. Did he suspect or no? I'm not sure, but he suspected that the Spore network didn't just connect space, it connected parallel universes as well, and at the end they do a jump that goes wrong midway through and suddenly they're somewhere, they don't know where they are, they can't pinpoint their location at all. They're in a different universe, right? I mean, that's pretty obvious. Yeah? I mean, talk about game changer. They're in now lost somewhere where they can't get home type territory. Voyager territory, if you will. So, what's next? Well, in this video, Prediction Corner. I made a video a couple of weeks ago about the inconsistencies with the timeline and how the aesthetic doesn't really match, the technology doesn't really match with where they've said this fits in the prime timeline. So, I think this ending pretty much guarantees that my theory at the end of that video, and if you want to know what that was, have a look up here. I'll put the link there, I think there, was probably pretty accurate. To sum it up, basically, I'm thinking we haven't been watching the prime timeline at all. We've been watching a completely different timeline. It's not the prime timeline, it's not the Kelvin timeline, it's a completely different timeline, and that accounts for all the inconsistencies we've seen so far. It's why the uniforms don't match what it should be at this point in Federation history. It's why the technology is so much more advanced, not just in aesthetic, but in actual ability than it should be at this time, based on what we've seen from the original series and the cage and all those sort of things. And I think we're now going to see them travel between universes using the Spore Drive. And in fact, I think we're probably already obviously in a different universe at the end of this episode. That's what the cliffhanger is. Given that Jonathan Frakes has already said that the Mirror Universe will be playing a part in this series, he's going to be directing an episode at some point, I think it's a safe bet to say that this universe that they've just hopped into is the Mirror Universe, or at least a version of it. Don't forget, there are theoretically an infinite amount of parallel universes where the Terran Empire exists, not just that one, so it doesn't necessarily have to be the version of the Mirror Universe we saw in the original series. It could be one which matches more aesthetically to Discovery's universe. And I don't think they'll go straight home from this universe. Either they will be hopping around different universes to try and get home, or they will spend the rest of the season stuck in this Mirror Universe. One or the two. I'm not sure which. Getting home is going to be a challenge. It's not going to be easy. If it was easy and they get home at the very first next episode, I'm going to be a bit disappointed, frankly. I want it to be a challenge. I want it to last at least the rest of this season, if not longer. I don't want it to last the whole show. I don't want it to be a Voyager thing where they're spending the rest of the series just trying to get home again. I want them to eventually get home. But I'd like, you know, it could take a year and a season and a half. That would be good. And in that time, they can hop to several different universes, and we might even get a crossover with the Prime universe. Who knows? Although if they do that, I don't expect that in the latter half of this season. I suspect they would save that for season 2. Moving away from parallel universes stuff now, well, the other big prediction that I think everybody on the internet is making is that Tyler is Voq. I mean, they've set that up pretty much to be obvious. I mean, maybe it's too obvious. I don't know. But it certainly seems to be hinting very strongly at that. He's some kind of sleeper agent. Now, whether or not he is Voq that's had a lot of surgery to change him into look like a human, and then had false memories implanted to effectively act as a very good sleeper agent so that he doesn't know he's Voq. That could be one suggestion. Or it might be some kind of mind transfer. Tyler might be a real person that they've captured, the Klingons have captured, and they've somehow implanted Voq into his brain. Maybe they're both in there. Maybe Voq and Tyler are in there. So Tyler is the one that... Oh, that's my doorbell. I've got a package. 1 second. Doctor Who DVDs. Right, where was I? Oh yeah, Tyler. So Tyler... I've lost my train of thought. Tyler, that's it. Tyler and Voq being the same person. Could be a memory implant thing. Maybe he's in there. They're both in there. And we're going to see that play out. I think they both present interesting opportunities. The latter one, if it's a memory implant, you've then got the aftermath of once they remove Voq from his brain, the kind of guilt of being a sleeper agent that Tyler would feel, and the repercussions of that would be interesting. But equally, if it is Voq, if it is just Voq that's been augmented and changed and surgically altered, then you've got the interesting fact that he seems to be falling in love with Michael. And if that's the case, you've got the repercussions of Voq having to deal with the fact that he's falling in love with a human. That could be interesting too. So what do you think of the season so far? Are you liking them? Are there episodes you like more than others? What do you think of my predictions? Do you think they're likely? Do you think that's what I've predicted is going to happen? Have you got your own predictions? Let me know in the comments below, and I'm sure I will be doing another video at least at the end of season 1, if not before. I have another Star Trek video in my head that I might be planning. In fact, I've already started planning, but these latest revelations are thrown. I don't know if it's relevant anymore. I might still do it anyway, so keep an eye out for that. And yeah, do please, if you like this, like, subscribe, share and all that jazz, and I will see you again for another video. Thanks. Bye.